Welcome back to the Student Hub Live orientation event for the School of Education, Childhood, Youth and Sport. Well, this is a very important session because we're going to be talking about tutors and tutorials. And as Eric explained right at the start of today, tutors are one of the most important relationships that you'll develop as an OU student. Now, we've got a lot of new people joining us and some of you are just joining us at the moment as well. So welcome. It's a live interactive session. You can talk to each other. You can ask any questions to other students. And HJ and Sultana are also there in the chat and they'll let us know if there are any questions that you'd like to put to our guests also. But I have Kate and Isabel here who are going to tell us all about tutors and tutorials, and you're going to give people an opportunity to come into the Adobe Connect room and see that they can't break it, which I think is very reassuring.
Absolutely.
Now, we've got some things we'd like to know. So on your screen, if you're watching in Stadium, you will see that there are two polls. We'd like to know which of these aspects do you think are most important to you in a tutorial, and what concerns, if any, do you have about taking part in tutorials? Now, for those of you who are new students, we're going to explain how it all works, but you may have a list of tutorials there. You may not even know what tutorials are. So let us know as and when you're ready what your thoughts are on those aspects. But let's start by explaining what it is all about. So how does the student-tutor relationship work at the OU, Isabel?
Right, in ECIS, that's our school, School of Education, Childhood, Youth and Sport, tutors are allocated a group of between 20 and 25 students, and this tutor group, or your tutor group, will be part of what we call a cluster of groups, and that is probably about 8 to 10 tutor groups. Now, your cluster could be geographically based, but depending on the size of your module, it might be a national cluster. But what that means is that you can attend any of the tutorials within your cluster, the online tutorials, and also that some modules will have face-to-face tutorials, which you'll be able to attend. But also the face-to-face tutorials, don't forget you can attend those anywhere in the country. It's the online tutorials that you'll be able to attend within your cluster. And the idea of clusters was to encourage collaboration between tutors and between students, to increase options, to give you more choice of the tutorials that you can go to, give you a range of dates and times, and just, increase flexibility and give you a chance to meet other students as well as your tutor, because the tutorial is one of the few opportunities of a shared learning experience within the Open University. So it's great if you can actually participate and attend them.
Well, we asked everyone at home which aspects they think is most important. Let's see what they had to say. So here it's 69% in the lead with a tutor who addresses the TMAs. So TMAs, the tutor marked assignments, seem to be very important there. And then it's a friendly atmosphere and getting to know other students also. If you haven't voted on that, you can keep doing so as we're going through, and of course let us know any questions. So the TMAs, and how important then is this role of the tutor and assessment? I mean, they're intrinsically linked in that your tutor marks your assignments, that's their main function, and they'll also carry out a lot of these tutorials.
Yeah. Shall I pick that up? Your tutor will be the person who's responsible for marking your assessed work, and that's why having a really good relationship with your tutor is important. Because they're the person who can really relate to you one-to-one as well as in tutorial groups to help you understand all your study materials and all the ideas that you're covering and things. But then they also help explain the assessment process. So if you've got any questions at all about any of the assessments, any of the TMAs, and the questions you're being asked, it's your tutor that you go to. They will explain it, and then eventually they'll be the person that marks your TMAs.
So will you get better marks if you get on well with your tutor?
Not necessarily. You'll get better marks if you listen to your tutor. I think that's the thing. And that's why I think one of the main messages we'd like to get across this morning is that relationship with your tutor is really important. And the tutorials are one way of building that relationship. So if you go to a face-to-face tutorial, you'll meet your tutor in person and you'll certainly get a better understanding of what makes them tick. You'll see them as a human being as well, which I think is really important. And but if you can't get to tutorials, equally using the telephone, using emails, using the tutor group forum, there are all ways of building that relationship with your tutor so that you a clearer understanding of what's expected, really, what your tutor expects, how they can help you, and therefore that will always help the assessment process at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned that there were clusters of tutorials. So I'm assuming then that students might go to a tutorial that isn't maybe run by their tutor. There might be a group of people teaching. Does that make it any less valuable?
I don't think so. I think it makes it more valuable, actually, because it gives students the option to experience a range of different teaching styles, tutoring styles, different personalities. But that doesn't mean to say they can't still establish a really strong relationship with their own tutor, because at the start of the module, your tutor will send you a welcome message and will actually outline the best ways of getting in touch with them, probably mostly by email, but also by telephone and texting, mobile. So I think the thing is that with Cluster World, that yes, there's a great opportunity to encounter a range of teaching styles and different approaches to the module. Because I think the great thing about tutorials is that it encourages active learning, which is really what we want in the Open University. We want you to be able to, students to be able to engage with concepts, to be able to work with other students in solving problems, in reflecting on module material together, to share, professional and personal experiences. So I think this is why tutorials are so important, and I think, why the clusters have actually opened up a lot of opportunities for students.
Now, I want to talk more specifically about this, but before we do, I think there's an important point that we need to clarify, because nearly 70% of people watching right now are new students. They might not know that the Open University have a very rigorous assessment strategy. Tutors and groups of people will all have guidance and marking. So whilst, as you say, you might do better if you listen to your tutor, actually there's a standardised way, I guess we might say, of approaching assessment and things. So students turning up to a tutorial that isn't run by their tutor will have the same advice as they would do from someone else. So whilst it's lovely to have that range of personality and style, as you say, Isabel, students must also know that there is a sort of safety in the sense that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, definitely. And the module materials include very, very clear guidance about each individual assessment activity that is spelt out, really. But again, if you've got any questions about any of that, go back to your own tutor, pick up the phone, email them or whatever, and they can clarify. But everybody has the same very, very clear and detailed guidance about assessments,
Now, one of my best students last year didn't attend a single tutorial. She worked on her own and didn't speak to, I hardly heard from her, and she did incredibly well. So do students need to attend tutorials, and what is the real benefit in it for those who do choose to go?
They don't need to. I mean, I was an Open University student myself, and I know there were some modules that I studied where I went to all the tutorials, and I can still remember those modules where I went where I didn't go to any tutorials, actually, for different reasons. So you have a choice, they're not compulsory. And for some students prefer to work by themselves, and others find it just very difficult to get to tutorials. But they are an extra, they are that opportunity to work with other students and to meet other students and to share ideas, to rehearse ideas, to get used to talking about, putting your ideas and your understanding into words, and the other thing, I think the other aspect of tutorials is that they can be fun as well, can't they?
Yes, they're mainly fun, actually. That's the thing. They are great fun. It's a great chance to interact with other students and your tutor, and to enjoy the module, to enjoy studying.
Now, you're saying that because you've obviously been to a lot of tutorials and run them, but many people watching right now are saying that they feel nervous about going because of maybe speaking in groups and things. HJ and Sultana, how are people feeling at home?
Well, we've got quite a few questions. A lot of people really like attending tutorials. Some people, as you said, they haven't been able to do the face-to-face ones. So last year they did the online ones and they really enjoy getting through with those. We'd have one really interesting question that I'm interested in as well, because a friend of mine has dyslexia while studying, and another person in the chat does as well. And they wanted to know what support there is for students with dyslexia, and I know Sultana's the person to go to about this.
Right next door.
So you can contact your disability support team. What they tend to do is do a profile, individual profile on the student, and then obviously when tutors make the first contact, they look at the profile to see how they can support the student right from the beginning. And also if there's any exams on the module, they can contact their student support team, and myself, I normally deal with exam arrangements for students. So if you've got dyslexia, you normally will be entitled to extra working time or sitting on a computer. So that's something that we can look into. So yeah, if there's any sort of disability, contact disability support team, and then contact your student support team, and we can obviously look at doing the profile. But as a tutor, how would you support students with dyslexia or any other disabilities?
I think firstly I'll just mention tutorials, and then
Yes.
maybe you can add to that, Isabel. Tutors take into account any kind of additional or learning need that students may have when preparing tutorials, to make sure that students who come along to tutorials aren't put under any unnecessary pressure. So, for instance, tutors wouldn't just put a load of reading in front of a student in a tutorial and say, read this to me. Yeah, that would not happen. If there is reading to be done in tutorials, for instance, then tutors would circulate that beforehand. We have ways of emailing students who've signed up to tutorials to give them lots of warning about what we might be doing, and if there's any preparatory kind of reading that could be done. So, and also making sure that any materials we use are accessible for everybody. So I think that's important to say that. So having dyslexia, for instance, shouldn't put you off coming to a tutorial. I really hope it wouldn't. That we try and make every
I mean, can I add as well that tutors will contact each student individually, and a student can tell a tutor what their particular requirements are, and if they want their assignments, say in a different coloured font or with a particular background, or how they want to get the best from the tutor and the tutorials. It's a process of discussion, really. And I think it's also worth mentioning that there is the possibility of having additional support sessions. The tutor will be or most tutors will offer a 1 hour additional support session, which can be negotiated with the student support team. And that's a very valuable resource, especially in the run-up to, say, an EMA or an exam even.
Perfect. Well, it's great having Sultana from our student support team here, so please do ask any questions to her in the chat if you're watching live. And if you aren't watching live on the catch-up, you can contact your student support team in a range of ways, and they're open at very flexible hours also, and you can email them, so do get in touch if there are any questions. We have a few other, Nazim wants to know about when the first tutorial will be, and Sarah wants to know how many there are per module. Now, this is all very specific to which modules these students are on, but how might they navigate and book onto tutorials? How do they find out what is available to them and when?
I mean, the main source is through Student Home, that you go onto your Student Home, and under each module that you're registered with, there'll be a link into the tutorials.
Right.
And when you click on that, you should see a list of the individual tutorials that are running, and then clicking on each one will then show you where each of those tutorials is running.
Okay.
So each tutorial is likely to be delivered at a number of different physical venues for the face-to-face, and then on a number of different occasions online.
Yeah.
And each of those will be listed on Student Home, and you select whichever one is best for you. There's also a way that they show the face-to-face tutorials within the number of miles distance from your home address. So that's quite helpful as well. So you can find out which face-to-face is nearest to you, and things like that, and then see your online options as well.
And that can be great, especially if you're going away. I've heard students go, oh, well, I was in London on the weekend, so I saw what was in the area, absolutely. And it can be great for that. Now, we asked people at home what concerns they had about taking part in tutorials, so let's see what they had to say. The biggest concern here is nervousness talking in front of other students, something we've spoken about before. But finding the tutorials at a time when I'm free, that sort of sense of anxiety, and online tutorials, getting to face-to-face tutorials also. So we're going to show students what it's like to go to an online tutorial so that they can experience that.
Yep.
But there is this issue, I know in particular for students with disabilities, in particular physical disabilities, sometimes getting to a tutorial can be very anxiety provoking. Uncertainties about parking, public transport, access to the buildings, etc. Many of which are run on weekends, and so sometimes there may be a bit of fear about what might actually happen when you get there. What can students do about that?
There's a number of things that the university should be aware of their needs and requirements, and when tutorial venues are booked, those are taken into account. So that's the first thing.
So it's very important to book onto tutorials so
Yes.
that the university knows.
Yes.
Because whilst you said that there was the system that you could see, again, you can click,
Yeah.
and then those will populate in your study planner so you won't forget, which is very handy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the university will know what requirements you have, and then they will accommodate those requirements. I've had students email me as well saying, oh look, I'm coming to this tutorial and what's it like, and I've said, oh, there's parking down by here, or you know.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, to talk to the tutor who's running the tutorial. If you've got any anxieties, drop them an email. You will be able to see their contact details online, so by all means get in touch with them beforehand and discuss any anxieties that you have. And remember actually that particularly that first tutorial, everybody is going to be anxious.
I get an email from nearly every single student saying, I'm really anxious about coming. Please don't ask me any questions. Right. But again, you know, I think this is a very, very honest question, because you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes, I mean, students think that they're going to be quizzed. They think they should have read everything and done everything. But what does happen at a tutorial, and what should students have prepared for, and what can they expect? Because actually, as you say, they're wonderful, lovely learning experiences. They're not a test or a quiz.
Yeah, exactly.
So how might students sort of frame that for themselves?
Well, I think the first thing is to try and read the module material that's relevant for that particular stage of the module and the course, and then go prepared with any questions, because you know the tutorial will be interactive. It gives you a chance to ask questions, to discuss. So go with your questions. Try and read your tutor's feedback on a TMA before you go. So do you have any questions on that feedback? Have you looked at the next TMA, and are there any questions that you want to ask about how to tackle that? Are there any concepts or theories or ideas that you're finding particularly challenging that you want to just make a note of and take those along with you?
That's a really good point, because sometimes I've got to a tutorial and we'll be discussing something and everyone says, actually, I found that really hard to read. I just couldn't. I tried and tried and tried. And so sometimes it might be worth then us all sort of saying, actually, yes, so we'll unpack some of that as well. Is what you don't know as important as what you do know then?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I find that it helps to make a note of it. You know, while you're reading, maybe you're thinking, oh, that's a really difficult concept or idea. I'll just make a note of it, and then let's see what other students think.
Or why is it relevant if all of a sudden you're thinking, well,
relevant?
How does that relate to that? So those sorts of questions would be appropriate?
Absolutely appropriate. Absolutely appropriate.
So you definitely get most out of tutorials if you've prepared and you come with those questions, because then you're making sure that you get what you need from the tutorials. It's really important to remember that they're not a test. That's really important what you said. And actually, if you haven't managed to do the reading, still go. I think that's the other thing. Don't feel that you can't go if you haven't. And I think for when you're really struggling with your studies, and I've been there myself, when I've got behind and I'm thinking, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. Actually, if you go to a tutorial, it can get you back on track. It can get you motivated again. It can just bring you up to date with where you're supposed to be. And you also see that actually it's not just you as well, which is a really important part of meeting other people.
So one of the things when I was studying, I used to go to tutorials like the day before my TMA was due, and then I used to turn up at the tutorial in London, and then I'd go home thinking, oh my goodness, I've got completely the wrong handle on that TMA, and I'd sit down and I'd rewrite it all. And I remember thinking, because I see it with my own students now, they'll come to a tutorial and we'll talk about things, and then they'll say, I've done it all wrong. And we say, actually, so much of this is your thinking. It's not about all the writing you've done. You can write, you can write, you can do something else, but those shifts in thinking matter. And also, as we said earlier, that sort of timeliness with the module. You could read the book all at once, but actually it's this reflection, and this is very important for the school, that reflective component of being able to work through things. So is that also what happens at tutorials, sort of that sense of maybe things weren't quite as they seemed, and that talking with others can sort of show some of those areas?
It's a sort of process of thinking out loud, really, isn't
Yes,
it? I think that's what goes
as well,
on.
reflecting on the material with other students, and also it's quite useful to be looking at the marking criteria because each of the assignments or TMAs will have a set of marking criteria, and it's quite useful to look at those with your tutor and to just unpack what they mean in terms of the actual module content, but also the skills that are required for that particular assignment. What key skills, what cognitive skills are you being asked to analyse? Are you being asked to evaluate? Are you being asked to compare and contrast? These sort of cognitive skills are quite useful to discuss with other students, just to really unpack what the question is really asking you.
And then the activities that you do will actually be
to
practicing that process, won't they?
That's
so
right.
to practice evaluating,
that's right, exactly.
To practice describing or whatever, analysing, pulling apart.
Now, you mentioned preparing for tutorials. So say some students are a bit behind, they've had a hectic week, kids have been sick, etc. Would it be better to spend an hour, say you had an hour, would it be better to skim that sort of chapter, or to look at the TMA question, or to read in depth for an hour and then stop? What would your advice be in terms of how people might manage that?
I think it's useful to have your eye on the next TMA question.
I agree.
Particularly if you are limited in time. Not so that you absolutely reject huge swathes of your reading, but that it helps you prioritise your reading. And also, as you're doing your reading, it'll help you ask certain questions of that reading. So in what way is what I'm looking at relevant to the question I've got to answer for this TMA? So have that question in front of you or on a bit of paper stuck on the top of your computer monitor or whatever, but have it in mind when you're doing your reading. And you do have to make decisions. I think as an OU student with lots and lots of other demands on your time, there's a constant process of prioritising and making decisions about, okay, what shall I do with this very valuable bit of time that I have today? It is worth reading in depth. I think it is skim reading lots and lots of stuff, but not actually taking it in and not understanding it is not a very productive kind of activity, really. And there's nothing worse than getting to the end of your precious study time and thinking, actually, I can't remember a word I've just read and I don't understand any of it. That's very demoralising.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think sometimes you've got to be instrumental as a student, and that is, I've only got so many hours of study time, and I need to get this TMA done. So you focus your reading with the question of the TMA in mind. So you're actually reading for a particular purpose. And I think that's much more constructive than trying to, just skim a load of material and hope it goes in.
Now, herein lies the challenge, because we've seen that people want information about their TMAs, their tutor marked assignments, and we've also heard that it's important to do this. However, we've also seen that reflection is really important, and we've heard from some colleagues that, for example, in certain levels, there'll be scaffolds, so that we'll look at diversity from different perspectives. So whilst you're assessed on certain things, there may be important skills or content or reflective components that are really necessary to underpin. So having strategies that just focus on TMAs can be a bit limiting, particularly when you're looking at reflection. And we also know that some of the tutorials are not linked to TMAs. So what's your advice then about those tutorials that seem sometimes superfluous or nice add-ons? Are they as important in the longer term?
I think in terms of the bigger picture, yes. So understanding ideas that that you will come back to time and time again throughout your degree. So I think it's important to remember that if you're on a pathway such as primary education or working with children and young people. Each module is related to the next one, and the ideas that you cover will work their way through. It's just that you'll work at them at greater depth and with greater criticality as you work through your degree. But you do need those core ideas. Yeah.
And of course meeting other students, because that can be really refreshing, hearing how everyone else is getting on.
Yeah, and again, when you meet other people at tutorials, one of the spin-offs might be that you come across a group of people who live fairly near you or who you really click with, and you say, okay, let's meet as a small group now. Let's meet in that cafe, you know, 2 weeks before our next TMA is due, and let's look at how we're getting on, and actually create your own support and study groups.
Absolutely. Or on Skype or WhatsApp.
Yeah, they can be really, really valuable.
Because sometimes there is, I mean, this is, you know, sort of unstructured collaborative work, but there are instances where students benefit hugely from working collaboratively, and in some cases it's essential, isn't it?
I think one thing about tutorials is that it does encourage collaboration, which is a really important employability skill. And, you know, out there in the workforce, I think there's a lot of employers that are looking for ability to work in teams, to collaborate. And, you know, this is something that you can cite on a CV to say that actually, you know, you've worked collaboratively with students. And maybe shared professional practice. I mean, a lot of our modules in ECIS are linked to professional practice in primary and early years settings. And it's a great opportunity to share professional experience as well, to support the module theory and concepts.
And there are also some forms of assessment, aren't there, that require some group work in some of the modules, things like making posters and presentations.
I think it's fair to say that in recent years, the Open University has been using more innovative forms of assessment. So you may not just get straight essay type questions in your assignments, but you may be asked to produce a poster, you may be asked to do a presentation, you may be, probably at third level, asked to do a group report, which involves perhaps working on a research paper to produce a group output. Infographics, you know, may form the basis of an assignment. So there are more innovative forms of assessment which are also developing other skills, especially as well as collaboration.
Now, you mentioned right at the start about tutors and groups, and I wonder if we could end the session, before we give students an opportunity to come into the room, with an idea about expectations from their tutors, because as you say, tutors will be getting in touch with students very shortly, they may be phoning them. And we've sort of spoken earlier on about the ratio, so it's very likely that within a small group of up to 20 students or so, a tutor will get to know each of those students also. How might students best work with this relationship?
I think it's at the beginning of the year, a tutor will get in touch with their students and give contact details and introduce themselves. So make sure you read that to start with. Tutors, I think you mentioned earlier, will tell the students what the best way to contact them is, what the best times of day to contact them are, and what they can expect in terms of a response. I think it's important to remember that all our tutors are part-time.
Yes.
That means that they're not available 24/7. But it does mean that they regularly check emails and will answer your emails within a certain time frame, which they'll share with you, usually 2-3 days, something like that. But certainly remembering that tutors are only part-time, and therefore work with that. Work with that. They are balancing a lot of things just as students are, aren't they? And I think that's always worth remembering.
I think tutors on most modules are probably expected on average to work about 6 hours a week on the module, which obviously, you know, there are peaks and troughs around marking assignments and things like that. But I agree with Kate that, you know, it's best to work with your tutor to find out the best contact times. Your tutor will tell you those, you know, whether it's evening or weekends or whatever. And also the best ways to contact them. You know, tutors may have different preferences, and it's as Kate said, you know, it's really good to work with your tutor and to realise that they're also got pretty busy lives too.
Yeah. We started the day talking about how to take responsibility for your part in that relationship earlier. And Liz was saying, you know, if you don't ask, you don't get. You know, take some responsibility for things and ask, because I guess there's that sort of fear if you think, oh, someone's only got 6 hours a week, you know, I'm not really important, etc. But equally, it's about sort of saying, this is what I'd like. And I guess then to some extent your tutor can either say, I can or cannot give you that.
Yeah, absolutely. As a
Absolutely.
tutor, it's much easier to work with a student if they talk to you
Yeah.
and they explain, this is what I need.
Yeah.
And and as a tutor, you can always say, I'm really sorry, I can't do that, but I can tell you who can.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you need more support than a tutor can offer, they will make sure that you're put in the right direction and referred to somebody who can.
Absolutely.
So never be frightened of asking and explaining what you need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In particular at level 1, because I think, you know, we're on this journey to become independent learners. So I've often seen students need a tutor less and less as they become more autonomous, more able to firefight. They're often more in charge of their time management. But when you're new, it's all very new, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And when you sat there looking at the website for the first time thinking, oh my word, you know, and what happens if I press this, am I going to break it? Is it going to blow up? You know, we're going to be meeting anybody who wants to meet us in the Adobe tutorial room in a minute. And that can be a great fear. If I press that button, am I going to break the whole of the Open University system? No, you're not. No. I had all those fears. Still have them sometimes. But, you know, it's all right. It is okay. And give it a go and ask. Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. Have you got your students allocated now for the next presentation?
Yeah, there's still 1 or 2 still coming into the tutor group at the moment, so I haven't quite got the final number, but we're nearly there, and certainly for my groups that I'm teaching, I've got my introductions now posted on the tutor group forums, and I'm beginning to send out those emails to my students saying, hello, this is me, who are you? Introduce yourself to me now. Yeah.
It's exciting, isn't it? It's really exciting.
And tutors are excited when they get that list of students, and we are excited to meet our new students and to start the year together. Yeah.
Brilliant. Isabel, what's your final piece of advice before we end the session for new students just starting out with their tutors, getting that email? What would you tell them to do?
Get in touch with your tutor, have a chat about any of your expectations and fears. Just start establishing a relationship, but have fun studying. Enjoy it. Enjoy your module. You know, it's great, and that's all I'd say, I think, at this stage.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. And now we're going to offer you the chance to go into an Adobe Connect session with Isabel and Kate, and you can see how it all looks and works. There are lots of sessions. I must just plug a few other things that we've got at the Student Hub Live, because for those of you who are new to academic writing, in October we're doing some Adobe Connect workshops open to any students, and those will cover things like unpacking your process words from your TMA and understanding what the question's all about, academic writing, and various sorts of skills-based sessions that we'll be running for you in Adobe Connect. And tomorrow we also have some sessions on time management, which I know is a topic that's been coming up a lot. So if you are interested, you can tune in tomorrow to watch that too. HJ and Sultana, how's everyone at home?
We're all excited, ready. We're on our countdown to receiving that first email from our tutors. I know everyone's really excited. Kirsty especially can't wait to see that email. And for the tutorial page, I know everyone's eager to book those tutorials and see when they can fit them in. So
and a few students have also already received the email from their tutor, so they're really excited, and you know they've made the first contact with their tutor, so they're already building that relationship with them. So everyone's really excited and eager to go.
Perfect. And some tutors wait, like sounds like you're more organised than me. I've already emailed everybody. But sometimes some tutors will wait until their final allocation is settled, because things can move around as we've got a few late registrations and things. So, you know, you can always get in contact and email your tutor as soon as they're allocated. You don't need to wait for that email. You can say, hi, this is me and this is what I'm doing. And that's always lovely to hear, isn't it? Perfect. Well, we're going to put a link to the session in the chat box, so HJ and Sultana will do that. We're going to have a bit of non-live time where we have a little bit of a lunch break, and then we're going to be back with Craig from our student support team. That will be a really, really interesting session as we start the afternoon's programme. So I'll see you at 12:10. Have a go at the Adobe Connect session and see what it's all about. Grab some lunch, don't forget that, and we'll see you back here very soon. Bye for now.